or the freeway here on the 405 South seems to have moderate volume, and it doesn't appear that this individual really has to slow down on this drive. And we're now on the 5 South. We left the 405 at the El Toro Y, and we're on the 5 freeway southbound. Coming up on, I believe, the next overcrossing here. We'll get that to you in just a moment. Oso Parkway. But there's going to be no problem as far as the volume of the freeway is concerned for this individual, John. And at least right now, slowed down to a pace that really doesn't appear that causing any danger to the other motorists on the freeway.
Yeah, it looks like about 4 CHP vehicles behind the suspect vehicle. I'm wondering if we can make out what that sign on the side of the van is. It looks like a Honda Odyssey van. Something for life, maybe, or something like that. We'll try and get a closer look. Fit for life.
Personal trainer.
Fit for life, yeah. So the vehicle apparently or suspected of being stolen, and police now chasing it. No word how many people are inside the vehicle, Scott. I know obviously with the driver, but we don't know if anybody else is in there, right?
Yeah, no, that's certainly a concern. We haven't heard CHP talk about this. CHP is the lead agency. LAPD was over for a while, but now they have a CHP helicopter overhead. And they do have several patrol cars right behind it at this point in time. If we pull out a little bit, I think you'll see that. So they haven't decided to just go in a tracking mode on this pursuit. You see as many as 5, maybe even 6 patrol cars right behind this individual. And it doesn't appear by having those patrol cars behind the suspect that it's making the suspect drive more erratic or a higher rate of speed. As I mentioned earlier, it went down to 35 miles an hour, then up to 100. Looks like SkyMap 7 is going to show it's doing right about the speed limit, maybe even a little bit below. And there's no reason the vehicle couldn't travel at a higher rate of speed. But it's been erratic, John. You know, from 35 to 100. That's a big difference. The patrol cars have been behind this individual the whole time. And certainly we follow these pursuits. You know, we want to make certain we want to look at this in an aspect that nobody gets hurt. At least right now, going 70 miles an hour or so, with this level of volume on the freeway, we don't see much of a danger to the folks out here. But hopefully this individual will give themselves up. There's an air unit overhead, as we mentioned, multiple patrol cars behind, and it looks almost like a futile attempt to get away, if you will, or maybe just waste time. You just never know.
Right, right. And at some point, Scott, they get into Camp Pendleton, which is kind of open territory, and maybe they've got more options in an area like that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting for us, too, because we get down towards Camp Pendleton, and we have issues of whether or not they're active and they're live. And if they're live with drills along the 5 freeway southbound along the coastline, they kick us out a mile offshore. And that brings up other issues for us as far as flotation devices on board the helicopter, and then the altitude we might be able to get cleared through. So that could cause an issue for us being able to continue south on this. It could even cause an issue for the CHP helicopter overhead, depending on what Pendleton is doing. But as far as this stretch of freeway, obviously, if it continues through Pendleton, you're down in Oceanside, and then you're down into San Diego County. But now you see the vehicle, for some reason, just started to really slow up once again. We bring up SkyMap 7, I think you'll see the speed is pretty slow from 90 miles an hour, not too long ago, now down to 50, and then it looks like all of a sudden starting to accelerate. So pretty erratic driving from this individual. And again, unfortunately, we don't know if there's more than just the driver on board, but you know, CHP, they got to deal with that, right? They think about a spike strip. At one point, at 35 miles an hour, they were even considering the pit maneuver, but they'd have to do that very cautiously, make sure there were no other vehicles around. They'd have to stop the traffic behind this vehicle. But now we're back up to over 100 miles an hour. So it gives you an idea how erratic this driver actually is.
Yeah, really picking up speed. Not a lot of changing of lanes. I mean, here and there, but it was not like we're seeing him dodge in and out of traffic, but certainly accelerating now up to around 100 miles an hour, as you mentioned. And again, this started in the Newton division. So this is all the way up in, you know, South LA area down to Orange County now, heading towards Camp Pendleton. So it's been a long pursuit. And CHP, as Scott mentioned, taking over for the LAPD as it makes its way further south. And then, of course, there are lots of issues with our coverage in terms of as it moves south, what it might mean for us. But yeah, right now, traveling around 100 miles an hour. Yeah. And, yeah, it's certainly not a safe situation for anyone.
No, and it's interesting, you know, you follow enough of these pursuits, and it's not that often that someone drives like this, stays in the carpool lane, goes down to 35 miles an hour, then goes up to over 100 miles an hour for absolutely no apparent reason. And then, as you mentioned, this individual staying in the carpool lane, and thank goodness for that, because if traveling at these rates of speed and then swerving in and out of traffic, that could cause some real problems for individuals out on the freeways, for motorists. And you see the helicopter, a great shot there, just flying right through it, keeping an eye on this individual. I believe CHP, they're low enough They have an observer in there. They've got everything they probably need to figure out whether or not there may be more people on board. They also, when it was going 35 miles an hour, John, they were able to get right up on top of it and get an idea and look in. They had a couple of patrol cars staged in front of this on the 405 South. So I'm pretty sure they've got a much better idea exactly what they're dealing with right here. But usually when you see someone drive this erratically, as far as the speed is concerned, from 35 to 100 and back and forth, you usually see them swerve in and out of traffic, but there's no indication that they're doing that, and there's no indication they don't have complete control of the vehicle. So it could be someone under the influence of drugs or alcohol, but they seem to be able to keep that car in the lane that they're in reasonably well, though there was a little swerve for no reason, it seemed like. So maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, or maybe it's somebody, you know, getting on their cell phone, trying to call family members. Hey, I'm in a bad situation here. Lots of possibilities with somebody in a situation like this who's allegedly willing to steal a car and get in a pursuit with authorities. The other issue, of course, for authorities is, you know, how close do they get in this pursuit? Do they back off? Right now, it seems like they're maintaining a fairly safe distance as this suspect, as you said, Scott, up and down, but staying in that carpool lane for the most part.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, in a lot of cases on a stolen vehicle like this, if they have enough information, they'll just let the individual go and they'll say, hey, we'll catch him later, especially if he just gets too dangerous for the public. Now, CHP seems to be a little more aggressive than, say, the LAPD or the LA County Sheriff's Department, and for the most part, they back off on the pursuit a little quicker than the CHP does. Not certain exactly why, but that's sort of what we have observed. But at this point in time, it doesn't appear the patrol cars behind this individual have any direct influence on whether they drive fast or slow. They just seem to do that without cause. And so I think that's why they're still on this on the freeway. They have the air unit overhead. And, you know, we're down into the San Clemente area here pretty soon, so we will have some issues as far as the Camp Pendleton airspace that you mentioned, Long Rifle. We have to get a hold of them and see if they're going to give us clearance through. If they do, we can continue south. I'm not even sure how far south we go into San Diego on a pursuit like this. It's something above my pay grade. Somebody have to figure that one out. But right now, there's no indication that this will stop because of traffic. There's no indication up ahead as I look for several miles that this individual will have to slow down because of traffic. Right now, the volume is very light on the freeway, 5 freeway southbound. We're in San Juan Capistrano, coming up on San Clemente.
And traffic doesn't look too bad, Scott. He's got a lot of room to work with, and that's probably helping authorities in determining how to deal with this. They don't have to rush into anything because it doesn't look like anybody's in immediate danger.
Correct. I think that's one of the reasons they're still on it, John. A lot of cases, you know, if traffic was just jam-packed right now, and this vehicle was swerving in and out of traffic and really making it dangerous for the motorists out on the freeway, I think the patrol cars would back off. Even the helicopter may climb a little bit, maybe give the driver of that vehicle some sort of sense that they're not behind him anymore, and see if that made it a safer situation. But with what we have going on right now, there's really no indication there's much danger to the public on our freeways here on the 5 freeway southbound, and I think that's why the patrol cars are still behind it, and they haven't gone, you know, to a tracking mode, which we've seen so often in the past. But you know, the real issue, John, I think, is who's in there, right? I mean, you see a minivan like this time of day. I mean, you could have children in there. I mean, you could have a lot of people in there. You just never know, and with the windows blacked out like that, it's going to be hard even for CHP to really tell for certain. I think they have a much better idea than we do. And it looks to me, John, like there's no passenger in the front seat from what I can tell. And we get a little bit of a view of the driver there.
Yeah, the back seat, though, is hard to see with those tinted windows. The sign, by the way, says Fit for Life. And I'm looking at their Instagram page right now. It looks like perhaps some type of fitness company. This pursuit started in the LAPD's jurisdiction in the Newton area and now making its way to the San Diego Orange County border. It's heading pretty far south. And as far as we know, one person in the vehicle. We believe it's a stolen vehicle, and authorities are pursuing it for that reason. But again, pursuit speeds have ranged from 100 miles an hour, 105 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, up and down. And the suspect now,
there's a change.
Yeah, you can see the suspect now right about 80 miles an hour as that person continues to head south. Yeah, that was a little close there.
Yeah, and that's the first time since we've been overhead we've seen the suspect try and get around vehicles. Most of the other vehicles in the carpool lane just got out of their way. And so that was a pretty tight squeeze. I mean, you know, obviously from this angle and with a shot compressed like that, it looks a little closer than it actually was. But certainly now we see acceleration up above 100 miles an hour, 110 now. So it's really erratic. This individual is certainly going through a lot right now, trying to figure out exactly what they want to do. And as you mentioned, John, you know, a lot of times they're on the phone with somebody. They may even be on the phone with somebody who's talking to the police. We've seen that in a lot of cases when you have someone with, you know, some sort of mental disability that takes the car. Maybe they're not supposed to. Not saying this is the case here, but in many situations like that, we've seen it where they're talking to a loved one and the loved one's talking to the police and saying, hey, be careful, that kind of thing. But we're seeing some dangerous speeds, and we saw the suspect, you know, swerve in and out of traffic. I don't see much traffic coming up ahead, and it doesn't look like we've got some issues, and we've got to try and really figure this out. So I'm going to turn my mic down and get back to you in just a moment, John.
Okay, Scott. Yeah, this pursuit taking place on the 5 South now, approaching the Camp Pendleton area. This started in the LAPD's jurisdiction, the Newton Division near South Central Los Angeles, and CHP has now taken over this pursuit. You can see speeds right now around 95 miles an hour. We believe one person in the van. We're not sure of that, but the windows are very tinted, but it looks like one person at least in the front seat, nobody else, and that person, authorities believe, has stolen this vehicle, and that's how this pursuit started. The sign on the side of the vehicle is Fit for Life. I'm looking at their Instagram page. It appears to be some type of fitness company that the van was taken from. But nobody injured so far. That's certainly good news. And authorities pursuing this vehicle. And we're getting word that authorities may try and deploy a spike strip at the Camp Pendleton checkpoint. I believe that's probably the Border Patrol checkpoint in Camp Pendleton on Interstate 5 that we're thinking of. So this could come to an end fairly soon. And we'll try and keep an eye on it. Scott, how are you with the signal situation heading into Pendleton like this?
Yeah, the signal's not going to be our issue, John. We're not going to be able to follow this down to that checkpoint that you mentioned. We may be able to see it from a distance. We can't get to 2,000 feet, which is above the restricted area for Pendleton. And with the weather the way it is, we're not going a mile offshore. If we had an engine problem, we'd have to ditch it into the water, and we don't have flotation devices or personal flotation devices on us right now. And the policy for us is not to fly offshore. So we're going to be restricted to holding it right here around the old San Onofre power plant, and then following this with the camera to the south. And we'll be able to see very close, I think, through the hazy shot here to the checkpoint. It's up ahead probably about 1.5 to 2 miles from where the vehicle is right now. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go any further south. So we're going to keep this shot up, and we can keep talking about it. It's just going to be a matter, if they do the spike strip, whether or not we'll really get a good look at it. But right now, there's no volume to slow the vehicle. CHP is really kind of backed off with the patrol cars. You see them there. And I'm wondering, do you see the, I do see LAPD was able to get through. Let's hold in and hover right here, please. They were able to get clearance. Can we stay right here? Okay, I guess for some reason we have to depart, and we're going to have to turn around. So you may see the skid here. I'm not sure when we're going to be able to turn the aircraft back around.
Okay, and for those of you joining us watching that ABC News special report, we are following a police pursuit involving a suspect in what authorities say is a stolen vehicle. This started in the LAPD's jurisdiction. It is now CHP that is handling this chase, and it has obviously gone a long distance, speeds varying quite a bit from 35 miles an hour up to 100 miles an hour. We're getting word that authorities may try and deploy a spike strip near the Border Patrol checkpoint on Interstate 5 in Camp Pendleton. And that's what we're approaching that now, getting very close to that area right now. But as you can see, Air 7 HD, they can't get much closer than this. They're being held back for flight restriction reasons on the military base. And there you can see that Border Patrol checkpoint, which we're approaching. And perhaps the spike strip was deployed. We'll have to get an update from authorities. We really can't get a good picture of it because of, you can see the view is obstructed. But authorities trying to stop this vehicle in this area, a suspected stolen vehicle from the LA area. The company, the sign on the side of the vehicle is Fit for Life. That's the company the vehicle belongs to. And now I'm really I can't really make out anything that looks like a pursuit that's come to a stop. I can see the police vehicle still chasing, it looks like. from our limited viewpoint on Air 7 HD. So this pursuit does continue into Camp Pendleton now, and we, of course, will continue to follow this story, and we will have updates for you on later editions of Eyewitness News.